The Birth of the Silk Road, Han Dynasty, and Zhang Qian's Mission. The Silk Road, one of the most significant trade routes in world history, owes its origins to the Han Dynasty of ancient China and the pivotal mission of a man named Zhang Qian. This remarkable journey began in the 2nd century BCE, when Emperor Wu of Han, a visionary ruler with grand ambitions, sought to expand China's influence and secure strategic alliances against hostile nomadic tribes. At that time, the Xiongnu Confederation posed a considerable threat to the northern borders of the Han Empire. In response, Emperor Wu decided to reach out to distant peoples who were also antagonized by the Xiongnu, hoping to establish diplomatic and military cooperation. To fulfill this bold vision, he entrusted Zhang Qian, a seasoned court official and diplomat, with a groundbreaking mission to the west. Zhang Qian's journey was fraught with challenges. Shortly after departing in 138 BCE, he and his entourage were captured by the Xiongnu and held in captivity for over a decade. Despite this immense setback, Zhang remained resolute. He eventually escaped and continued his westward journey, traversing vast and unfamiliar territories. His travels took him through Central Asia, where he encountered various cultures, kingdoms, and societies previously unknown to the Chinese court. Notably, Zhang reached the kingdom of Daiyuan, located in the Fergana Valley, where he observed advanced horse breeding practices and the use of large, powerful horses that would later captivate the interest of the Han military. Zhang Qian's journey further led him to Bactria and Sogdiana, regions rich in culture and commerce. He discovered vibrant trading cities, agricultural innovations, and networks of merchants exchanging goods across vast distances. These regions had contacts with Indian, Persian, and Hellenistic civilizations, giving Zhang insights into a world far more interconnected than previously imagined by the Chinese elite. Though his primary mission to form an alliance with the Yuezhi was not immediately fruitful, the intelligence he gathered was immensely valuable. Upon his return to China, some 13 years after his departure, he presented a detailed report that profoundly reshaped the Han court's understanding of the West. Zhang Qian's observations laid the foundation for the Silk Road. His accounts revealed the possibility of overland trade routes that could link China with Central Asia and beyond. The Han Dynasty, impressed by these findings, began to establish outposts, trade missions, and military garrisons along these routes. Gradually, a complex network of paths emerged, connecting the heart of China to lands as far as the Roman Empire. These routes facilitated not only the exchange of silk, a luxury commodity highly prized in the West, but also the flow of goods such as spices, precious stones, metals, glassware, and even exotic animals. More than just commerce, the Silk Road became a corridor of cultural exchange. It enabled the movement of ideas, technologies, religious beliefs, and artistic influences across continents. Chinese inventions like papermaking and gunpowder would eventually find their way to the West, while Buddhism traveled from India to China, profoundly influencing East Asian culture and philosophy. Zhang Qian's mission, though initially conceived for strategic diplomacy, inadvertently opened the gateway for centuries of interaction between East and West. His contributions earned him recognition as a pioneering explorer and a symbol of determination, curiosity, and resilience. Under the Han Dynasty's stewardship, the Silk Road flourished. The dynasty invested in infrastructure, improved security along the route, and fostered relations with Central Asian kingdoms. These efforts ensured a relatively stable environment that encouraged long-distance trade. Caravans laden with goods and stories crossed mountains, deserts, and rivers, weaving a rich tapestry of human interaction. Although the Silk Road would evolve and change over the centuries, its genesis during the Han era remains a defining moment in global history. The vision of Emperor Wu and the unwavering spirit of Zhang Qian were instrumental in connecting civilizations, laying the groundwork for an enduring legacy of cross-cultural exchange that continues to inspire awe to this day. Geography of the Silk Road. Routes across continents. The Silk Road was not a single road, but a vast network of trade routes that connected east and west for centuries. It emerged during the Han Dynasty around the 2nd century BCE, enabling cultural, economic, and political interactions across Asia, Europe, and parts of Africa. Spanning thousands of miles, the Silk Road shaped civilizations by linking distant regions through a system of overland and maritime paths that allowed the movement of goods, ideas, and people across diverse geographies. Beginning in ancient China, the Silk Road's eastern terminus was the city of Chang'an, now known as Xi'an. From there, caravans traveled through the Gansu Corridor, a narrow stretch of land hemmed in by mountains and deserts. This route directed traders toward the edges of the formidable Taklamakan Desert. To avoid the perilous interior of this desert, travelers moved along its northern and southern edges, stopping at oasis cities such as Dunhuang, Kashgar, and Hotan. These locations became vital centers of rest, commerce, and cultural exchange. Beyond the deserts, the routes entered Central Asia, a region characterized by rugged terrain, fertile valleys, and steppelands. Cities like Samarkand and Bukhara, located in what is now Uzbekistan, served as major hubs where merchants exchanged goods, languages, and religious beliefs. The routes then crossed the Iranian plateau, navigating through ancient cities such as Merv, Rey, and Nishapur. These cities functioned as important waypoints for traders heading toward Mesopotamia and the eastern Mediterranean. Travelers encountered several natural barriers, including the Tian Shan, Pamir, and Zagros mountain ranges. These ranges not only influenced the paths taken but also determined seasonal accessibility. Mountain passes, though difficult, allowed connections between otherwise isolated regions. Along these paths, caravanserais offered safe lodgings and served as melting pots where stories, technologies, and ideas mingled. Further west, the roads branched into the Levant, reaching cities like Aleppo and Antioch before entering the Roman and later Byzantine empires. Parallel to the land routes, maritime paths formed the southern routes of the Silk Road. Ships departed from Chinese ports such as Guangzhou and traveled across the South China Sea, reaching coastal cities in Southeast Asia. From there, they continued to ports on the Indian subcontinent, including Calicut and Tamil Nadu's coastal towns. India played a central role in redistributing goods from both east and west, further connecting to the Persian Gulf and Red Sea ports. These sea routes reached the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa, leading to inland routes through Egypt and North Africa. Goods were then transported across the Mediterranean Sea to European cities such as Venice and Constantinople. Maritime trade allowed faster movement of heavier goods, like ceramics, spices, and precious stones, complementing the slower but expansive overland networks. The diversity of the Silk Road's geography profoundly influenced the nature of trade and interaction. Harsh deserts, highlands, and open plains challenged movement, but also protected travelers in certain regions. Despite these difficulties, goods such as silk, paper, jade, porcelain, glassware, and spices moved steadily between continents. Alongside them traveled religious doctrines like Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, carried by monks, scholars, and pilgrims seeking new lands and followers. The Silk Road became a conduit not just for trade, but also for diplomacy, science, medicine, and artistic expression. Empires rose and fell around it, each leaving an imprint on the routes through their infrastructure, laws, and cultural policies. The Mongol Empire, particularly in the 13th and 14th centuries, played a major role in revitalizing the Silk Road by ensuring the safety of travelers and encouraging transcontinental exchanges under a unified administration. Eventually, the rise of maritime exploration in the 15th century, shifting political powers, and new economic priorities reduced the significance of overland routes. Yet, the Silk Road's legacy remains a testament to human ingenuity in overcoming geographical challenges to connect distant parts of the world. It stands as one of history's most remarkable examples of cross-continental interaction, shaped and defined by the very landscapes it traversed. Through mountains, deserts, cities, and seas, the Silk Road bound together diverse peoples and ideas in a vast and enduring web of exchange. Silk, the fabric that started it all. Silk, one of the most coveted materials in human history, played a pivotal role in shaping global trade, diplomacy, and culture. Its origin traces back over 4,000 years to ancient China, where it was first produced and worn exclusively by royalty and the elite. The discovery of silk is traditionally attributed to Empress Lisu, who, according to legend, uncovered the process of unraveling silk threads from cocoons after one fell into her tea. Whether mythical or not, what followed was a centuries-long journey of innovation, secrecy, and far-reaching influence. The allure of silk began with its texture smooth, strong, and shimmering in natural light. Unlike any other fabric available at the time, it was lightweight yet durable, luxurious yet practical. Early Chinese weavers perfected techniques to spin and dye silk in vibrant colors, often incorporating elaborate patterns and symbols that held cultural significance. The fabric became a status symbol in Chinese society and a closely guarded state secret. Exporting the techniques of silk production was forbidden under penalty of death, underscoring its value to the Chinese economy and imperial power. Silk's importance extended beyond fashion and domestic use. It became a diplomatic tool, gifted to foreign rulers, exchanged in tribute missions, and used as currency in trade. As Chinese dynasties flourished, especially during the Han period, demand for silk outside China grew immensely. Merchants, travelers, and envoys carried silk westward, and soon it reached the edges of Central Asia, the Middle East, and eventually Europe. It was this increasing demand that gave rise to the legendary network of trade routes known as the Silk Road. Although the Silk Road included many good spices, precious metals, glass, and Mora silk was its most symbolic and sought-after commodity. Its value in Roman markets was so high that it was often weighed in gold. Roman aristocrats draped themselves in silk garments, and Roman authors even debated its influence, questioning whether such indulgence encouraged moral decline. Despite cultural debates, the demand only intensified. From the courts of Byzantium to the palaces of Persia, silk garments became a mark of wealth and sophistication. The journey of silk was not just commercial but also cultural. As it moved across regions, it brought with it artistic styles, religious beliefs, and scientific knowledge. Textile patterns inspired local adaptations, and silk garments were customized to fit regional tastes and customs. In India, Silk blended with local weaving traditions, leading to new forms of textile art. In the Islamic world, silk workshops flourished, producing richly decorated fabrics with calligraphy and geometric patterns. Meanwhile, in Europe, silk weaving centers eventually emerged in cities like Venice and Lyon, forever altering the continent's fashion and economy. China's monopoly on silk production continued for centuries, but over time, knowledge of sericulture, the cultivation of silkworms, spread. It is believed that by the 6th century CE, Byzantine agents smuggled silkworm eggs out of China, hidden in hollow bamboo canes. This act marked the beginning of silk production in the West and gradually reduced Chinese dominance over the trade. Nonetheless, the prestige associated with Chinese silk remained strong, and the fabric continued to be revered as an Eastern marvel. Silk also played a role in the development of printing, painting, and bookmaking. In China, before the widespread use of paper, silk was used as a medium for writing and artistic expression. Scrolls, maps, and religious texts were meticulously inscribed on silk, preserving knowledge for generations. The fabric's durability and elegance made it ideal for such uses, long before it was worn on the backs of emperors and nobles. Even as global trade evolved and new materials emerged, silk maintained its legendary status. It influenced clothing design, social customs, and trade policies across continents. Its journey from the silkworm cocoon to international markets illustrates humanity's deep desire for beauty, refinement, and cultural connection. Silk not only clothed the ancient world, but also helped weave together civilizations in a shared history of innovation and exchange. The fabric that started it all remains a symbol of elegance, legacy, and the enduring power of human curiosity. Goods traded on the Silk Road. More than just silk. The Silk Road, stretching thousands of miles across continents, was far more than a passage for silk alone. Though named after the luxurious fabric that first sparked its fame, the Silk Road evolved into a complex network of trade that carried a wide array of valuable goods. From the bustling markets of China to the ports of the Mediterranean, caravans and ships transported products that influenced economies, altered lifestyles, and connected civilizations. Merchants and travelers moved along these routes, not only to exchange merchandise, but also to share technology, art, medicine, and belief systems. Among the most important exports from China, in addition to silk, were paper and porcelain. The invention of paper revolutionized communication, record-keeping, and education throughout the ancient world. Once it reached Central Asia and the Islamic world, paper allowed scholars to copy texts and expand libraries. Porcelain, with its delicate strength and beauty, was another prized item. It became highly desirable in Persia and Europe, where artisans eventually attempted to replicate its fine quality. These Chinese innovations traveled alongside lacquerware, tea, jade, bronze mirrors, and other crafts, each representing the skill and refinement of Chinese culture. From India, traders brought spices, cotton textiles, ivory, and precious stones such as sapphires and rubies. Indian black pepper was especially valued in Roman kitchens and later in Arab cuisine. The vibrant cotton fabrics of the Indian subcontinent were sought after for their patterns and dye techniques. Religious artifacts, including Buddhist scrolls and statues, made their way along these routes as well, carried by monks and pilgrims. Indian medicine, astronomy, and mathematics also spread westward, enriching the intellectual traditions of many regions. The Middle East played a central role as both a trading hub and a source of goods. Persian carpets, known for their craftsmanship and intricate designs, were highly valued. Glassware from Syria and Egypt was another popular export, admired for its clarity and beauty. Fragrant oils, perfumes, and incense, such as frankincense and myrrh, moved through the deserts and were used in rituals across cultures. The Islamic world contributed scientific texts, calligraphy, and ceramics that reflected artistic and philosophical development. Europe, although more of an importer than exporter during much of the Silk Road's golden age, still offered goods to the exchange. Woolen textiles, amber from the Baltic, and metalwork were traded in return for Eastern luxuries. Venetian merchants acted as middlemen, transporting goods between Asia and European markets. From Mediterranean ports, products spread through maritime and overland routes to cities across the continent. The arrival of exotic goods from the East influenced local customs, diets, and fashion in European societies. Central Asia, positioned along the Silk Road, was more than a corridor. It was a source of goods like horses, livestock, leather, and furs. Horses from this region were especially prized for their strength and stamina, making them invaluable to ancient armies. Falconry birds were exchanged among noble courts as symbols of status. Nomadic tribes contributed wool, yurts, and artisanal items, reflecting a way of life adapted to the steppe. Trade also included basic yet essential goods. Salt, grains, dried fruits, and tools were exchanged, supporting communities in challenging environments. Medicines made from herbs, minerals, and animal parts moved between cultures, expanding healing practices. The variety of goods reflected the range of people involved in trade. This constant movement fostered innovation and cultural blending. As the Silk Road thrived, its legacy went beyond silk. The movement of goods across regions shaped architecture, cuisine, clothing, and craftsmanship. Though empires fell and routes changed, the memory of a world connected by trade remains. The Silk Road symbolized global interaction before globalization had a name, and its story was written not just in silk, but in every object, idea, and encounter shared along its path. Merchants, caravans, and the logistics of ancient trade. The success of the Silk Road and other ancient trade networks depended not just on the goods exchanged, but on the people who moved them and the systems that supported their journey. Merchants, both independent and organized, were the driving force behind these long-distance exchanges. They crossed vast territories, often risking their lives to transport valuable items across unforgiving terrain. These merchants did not operate in isolation. They were part of structured caravans, supported by logistical networks that allowed trade to flourish over thousands of miles and through changing political landscapes. Caravans were essential for moving goods safely through deserts, mountains, and remote areas. A typical caravan included dozens or even hundreds of animals, usually camels, mules, or horses, depending on the region. These animals carried textiles, spices, metals, ceramics, and other valuable items. Camels were favored in arid zones for their endurance and ability to travel without water. In mountainous areas, mules or yaks were used for their stability on rugged paths. Merchants planned each journey carefully, considering the weight of cargo, resources available, and locations of trading posts or settlements. Security was always a concern for traders. Bandits often targeted caravans, knowing they carried wealth. To reduce these risks, merchants traveled in groups, hired guards, or joined convoys sponsored by local rulers. Some states provided military escorts or built fortresses along key stretches of the route. In times of political unity, such as under the Mongol Empire, roads were significantly safer, encouraging longer and more frequent trade missions. Peaceful conditions boosted confidence among merchants and created closer ties between distant markets. Trade routes were not fixed lines but flexible paths that shifted due to weather, conflict, or demand. Merchants relied on geography, local customs, and political knowledge to decide which routes to take. Some paths followed river valleys or skirted mountains, while others crossed open plains and deserts. Timing was critical. Seasonal weather influenced travel. Monsoon winds affected maritime trade, while snow-blocked passes determined when overland routes were usable. A poor decision could result in delays or disaster. Rest stops, known as caravanserais, were built along major routes to support travelers. These structures offered shelter, food, and a safe place to rest for both merchants and their animals. Caravanserais were also commercial and social hubs, where deals were made and information about distant lands exchanged. These way stations played a crucial role in sustaining trade and promoting cross-cultural contact. Some even had workshops and warehouses, allowing traders to store or repair goods as needed. Merchants often served as cultural messengers. As they moved between empires and regions, they carried more than products. They brought ideas, languages, art, religious beliefs, and new technologies. They adapted to local customs, learned dialects, and sometimes settled in foreign lands, becoming part of the communities they once visited. Their presence blended traditions, enriching the cultures of regions across Eurasia. In many cities along the route, communities of traders formed lasting legacies in architecture, cuisine, and commerce. Logistics extended beyond physical transportation. Merchants managed systems of credit, partnership, and negotiation. Contracts, promissory notes, and seals ensured trust and accountability. Many operated on credit, extended by wealthy patrons or financiers, with profits shared under pre-arranged agreements. Markets at trade junctions functioned as clearinghouses where goods were exchanged, prices set, and future trades arranged. These systems increased efficiency and reduced risks of transporting goods over long distances. Despite hardships, merchants remained resourceful and determined. Their efforts sustained a network linking distant civilizations through commerce and cooperation. The caravans they led were more than animal processions. They were moving lifelines of connection and cultural transformation. The logistics behind ancient trade were sophisticated and adaptive, proving that behind every successful exchange lay careful planning and perseverance. Across deserts, mountains, and empires, merchants and their caravans carried not only the wealth of nations, but also the spirit of shared humanity. Major trade cities and hubs along the way. Throughout history, the Silk Road served as more than a trade route. It was a lifeline connecting cities that became legendary centers of commerce, diplomacy, and culture. These urban hubs were not only stops for weary travelers, but also crossroads where goods, ideas, and peoples from different civilizations intersected. The success of long-distance trade relied heavily on these cities, which provided essential services, protection, and vibrant marketplaces. Their strategic locations made them economic engines of their time, linking empires and shaping global interaction well before modern globalization. Chang'an, the ancient capital of China during the Han and Tang dynasties, was one of the eastern anchors of the Silk Road. It was a city of grandeur, home to imperial courts, scholars, and artisans. Merchants from Central Asia, Persia, and beyond gathered there to trade silk, ceramics, and spices. The city's wide streets, bustling bazaars, and diverse population reflected its role as an international hub. Strict regulations and protective policies ensured a relatively secure environment for traders, making it one of the most important cities of its era. Heading west, Dunhuang was a vital oasis city on the edge of the Gobi Desert. Its location allowed it to serve as a gateway between China and Central Asia. Dunhuang was more than a stopover. It was a religious and artistic center, known for the Buddhist cave temples carved into nearby cliffs. Pilgrims, monks, and traders left behind manuscripts, murals, and artifacts that tell the story of cultural exchange. It stood as a testament to the spiritual and material wealth that moved along the Silk Road. Further along the trade route, Samarkand rose as one of the most celebrated cities of Central Asia. Situated in present-day Uzbekistan, it became a flourishing center under various empires, including the Sogdians and later the Timurids. Its markets brimmed with goods from China, India, the Middle East, and Europe. The city's architecture, featuring grand madrasas and turquoise domes, revealed the artistic sophistication inspired by centuries of intercultural contact. Samarkand's prominence made it a place where knowledge, religion, and merchandise all intersected in profound ways. Bukhara, another jewel of Central Asia, complemented Samarkand in both commerce and scholarship. Known for its libraries, mosques, and caravanserais, Bukhara attracted traders, theologians, and craftsmen. It was a place where Islamic thought flourished alongside mercantile success. Merchants could find goods from distant lands, including Chinese silk, Indian spices, and European glassware. The city's infrastructure supported the steady flow of caravans and offered a level of organization that kept trade moving efficiently through the region. In Persia, cities like Merv and Nishapur emerged as critical nodes along the eastern and central parts of the route. Merv, located in modern-day Turkmenistan, was once one of the largest cities in the world. It boasted palaces, gardens, and learning institutions. Its strategic position made it a meeting point for traders coming from China, India, and the Arab world. Nishapur, situated in present-day Iran, served as a cultural and economic hub, famed for its pottery and artistic production. These cities embodied the Persian contribution to Silk Road trade, combining administrative strength with cultural richness. As the route continued westward, the cities of the Levant became gateways into the Mediterranean world. Aleppo and Antioch, located in present-day Syria and Turkey, were among the most important. These cities connected inland routes to seaborne trade, enabling the transfer of goods from Asia to European ports. Their cosmopolitan character was shaped by centuries of interaction among traders of different backgrounds, languages, and faiths. At the western terminus, Constantinople stood as a magnificent bridge between East and West. With its strategic location straddling Europe and Asia, it became a vital endpoint for goods that had traveled across the continent. Its markets offered everything from Eastern silks to African ivory, and its sophisticated bureaucracy managed complex trade regulations. The city was a melting pot of cultures, reflecting the vast reach of the Silk Road network. These cities were more than stops. They were engines of exchange, catalysts of innovation, and symbols of interconnectedness. Each played a unique role in sustaining the flow of commerce and culture. Their rise and legacy show how geography, leadership, and cooperation turned ordinary locations into extraordinary centers of world history. The spread of religions, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism. The ancient trade routes, most notably the Silk Road, were not only highways for goods but also powerful channels for the exchange of beliefs, values, and spiritual traditions. As merchants, pilgrims, and travelers moved from one region to another, they carried with them more than just material products. They brought ideas that shaped worldviews and inspired communities. Among the most influential of these ideas were the teachings of Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism. Each of these religions spread beyond their places of origin, finding new followers, adapting to different cultures, and leaving a profound mark on the regions they reached. Buddhism, which originated in the Indian subcontinent, expanded rapidly across Asia through both land and maritime trade networks. Monks and pilgrims journeyed along the Silk Road, establishing monasteries, translating scriptures, and engaging in dialogue with local populations. In Central Asia, oasis towns became centers of Buddhist learning, where cave temples and manuscripts stood as evidence of devotion and scholarship. From there, Buddhism continued to China, Korea, and eventually Japan. The religion's flexibility allowed it to integrate into diverse cultural contexts, often blending with existing beliefs. Buddhist art and architecture flourished in places far from its birthplace, demonstrating its ability to resonate across linguistic and ethnic boundaries. Islam emerged in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century and quickly grew into a major religious and political force. Through trade, diplomacy, and scholarly exchange, Islam extended from the Middle East to North Africa, Central Asia, and parts of South and Southeast Asia. Muslim merchants and missionaries played a central role in this process, as they traded goods like spices, textiles, and glassware. They also shared religious teachings. Islamic centers of learning rose in cities along trade routes, where scholars discussed theology, science, and philosophy. The religion's emphasis on community, charity, and education helped establish enduring institutions that shaped public life in many regions it touched. Christianity, which began in the Roman province of Judea, also spread along trade and travel networks. Early Christians traveled extensively, preaching and forming communities across the Roman Empire and beyond. Despite initial persecution, the religion gradually gained acceptance, especially after the conversion of Emperor Constantine. As the faith expanded, missionaries ventured eastward, reaching Persia, Central Asia, and parts of India. Nestorian Christians, in particular, established churches and schools along the Silk Road. They contributed to intellectual life and translated religious texts into local languages. While the influence of Eastern Christianity diminished over time in some regions, its historical presence remains a testament to its reach and impact. Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, originated in ancient Persia and was once the dominant faith of powerful empires. Though its spread was more regional compared to the other major religions, it nonetheless exerted significant influence across trade routes. Zoroastrian fire temples stood along paths where merchants and travelers passed, offering both spiritual comfort and social connection. The religion's teachings on morality, cosmic dualism, and the importance of good thoughts, words, and deeds resonated with many. Even as other faiths gained prominence, Zoroastrianism's legacy endured through cultural practices, symbols, and philosophical ideas that later influenced other religious traditions. These religions not only traveled physically with people, but they also evolved through their encounters with other cultures. In many cases, local traditions shaped how doctrines were practiced, giving rise to distinct regional expressions of the same faith. Artistic styles, rituals, and even theological interpretations reflected these intercultural exchanges. Temples, mosques, churches, and fire altars stood side by side in some cities, evidence of a world where different spiritual paths coexisted, competed, and sometimes converged. The Silk Road and similar trade networks created more than just economic wealth. They fostered a spiritual map of humanity's search for meaning. The spread of Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism across these routes highlights how deeply interconnected the ancient world truly was. Ideas moved with the same force as gold and silk, and their influence extended well beyond borders. These belief systems helped shape laws, ethics, literature, and identity across continents. Their movement through trade routes reminds us that history was not only shaped by commerce, but also by the inner lives of people seeking understanding, connection, and faith. Art, language, and ideas on the move. Art, language, and ideas have always been dynamic forces, constantly moving across geographies, cultures, and time. From the earliest cave paintings to the digital art of today, human creativity has never been static. Civilizations, as they rose and fell, carried with them their visual languages, oral traditions, and intellectual frameworks. These elements often migrated not by conquest alone, but through trade, pilgrimage, exploration, and exile. As merchants journeyed along ancient trade routes like the Silk Road, they did not carry just goods. They transported aesthetics, beliefs, and styles. Nomads and migrants brought with them unique visual and linguistic elements, influencing the regions they touched. Through this exchange, a Persian miniature might reflect Chinese brushwork, or an Arabic manuscript might carry Greek philosophical thought. Art became a medium where dialogues between cultures emerged, each piece holding within it traces of distant lands and times. Language too travelled, not merely as a tool for communication, but as a vessel of worldview and thought. With every migration and contact, languages borrowed from one another words, scripts, and grammatical structures. These influences are visible in the shared linguistic roots across seemingly unrelated tongues. When Sanskrit ideas travelled eastward, they shaped Chinese, Japanese, and Southeast Asian texts, not just in content but in form and rhythm. When Latin moved across Europe with the Roman Empire, it laid the groundwork for many modern European languages. The spread of Arabic alongside Islamic civilization enriched not only the linguistic map, but also transmitted science, philosophy, and literature into regions as diverse as Spain, North Africa, and Central Asia. Written texts were translated and adapted, breathing new life into old wisdoms. Ideas, whether spiritual, philosophical, or scientific, often moved more fluidly than people. Ancient centers of learning such as Nalanda, Baghdad, Athens, and Alexandria became melting pots of thought where ideas from different civilizations met and merged. A Greek treatise on astronomy might be translated into Arabic, then Latin, and later influence thinkers in Renaissance Europe. Religious beliefs, though rooted in specific traditions, were shaped and reshaped by the cultures they entered. As Buddhism traveled from India to East Asia, it took on local forms, Zen in Japan, Chan in China, while retaining its core essence. The idea of democracy, born in ancient Greece, took centuries to evolve and cross continents before taking modern form. Even technological ideas like papermaking and printing, originating in China, transformed communication and governance wherever they reached. artistic forms often reveal the clearest evidence of this exchange. The Gothic cathedrals of Europe incorporated architectural techniques from the Islamic world. African sculptures influenced modernist movements in Europe. Persian poetry inspired South Asian ghazals. In recent history, jazz emerged from African American communities but was shaped by a blend of African rhythms and Western harmonies. Films, once a local medium, now serve as global narratives, borrowing from multiple storytelling traditions. Fashion, too, reflects this ongoing dialogue of textiles, motifs, and designs from one part of the world become trends in another. Artists have always looked beyond borders, drawing from both memory and imagination to create something new yet rooted in a collective past. The movement of language mirrors these patterns. Literature has long been a site of cultural fusion. The epics of Homer, the fables of India, and the philosophical dialogues of China found new life in translation. Writers, especially those living in exile or diaspora, often combine linguistic traditions to create hybrid forms that speak across boundaries. Language becomes not just a means of storytelling, but an evolving canvas of identity and connection. No culture has developed in isolation. The movement of art, language, and ideas has enriched human history, allowing societies to grow not only by invention, but also by adoption and adaptation. This ongoing exchange, at times peaceful and at other times turbulent, has been central to shaping our world. It is through this circulation that we understand the interconnectedness of human experience. Every mural, manuscript, and melody tells a story of passage of influence, reinterpretation, and shared heritage. As history moves forward, these elements will continue to evolve, reminding us that creativity knows no borders, and the human spirit, expressed through art, language, and ideas, is always on the move. Cuisine and agriculture, new tastes across continents. Cuisine and agriculture have long served as subtle yet powerful indicators of human movement, cultural exchange, and adaptation. From ancient times, the spread of crops, cooking methods, and eating habits has reshaped societies and transformed identities. As people traveled across seas and deserts, they did not merely carry tools or weapons, they carried seeds, spices, and culinary traditions that found new homes and grew into global legacies. The food we eat today is the product of centuries of migration, experimentation, and innovation. Agriculture, as the foundation of settled life, created the conditions for societies to thrive, while cuisine became a reflection of climate, trade, and culture, evolving with every new influence. The exchange of plants and farming techniques has been among the most impactful processes in world history. Early agricultural practices developed independently in several regions: wheat and barley in the Middle East, rice in Asia, maize and potatoes in the Americas, and sorghum in Africa. As civilizations interacted, these crops traveled vast distances, changing the diets and economies of distant lands. The Columbian Exchange, sparked by European voyages to the Americas, brought tomatoes, maize, cocoa, and chili peppers to Europe, Asia, and Africa, while wheat, sugarcane, and livestock were introduced to the New World. This dramatic reshaping of global agriculture created new possibilities for cuisine and trade, forging links between previously unconnected societies. As new crops took root in unfamiliar soils, culinary traditions began to absorb and adapt these ingredients in imaginative ways. Potatoes became essential in Irish and Russian diets. while chili peppers transformed the flavor profiles of Indian and Southeast Asian cooking. The tomato, once unknown in Italy, became a central ingredient in its most iconic dishes. These adaptations were not instant but occurred through generations of trial, preference, and necessity. Farmers experimented with climate conditions and irrigation techniques, while cooks blended old flavors with new, creating meals that spoke of faraway lands yet felt entirely local. Cultural and religious practices also shaped agricultural choices and food preparation. Certain communities developed distinct agricultural calendars and rituals around planting and harvesting seasons. Others cultivated specific crops to fulfill dietary or ceremonial needs. In many regions, spices and herbs were valued not only for their flavor, but also for their medicinal and preservative properties. This added another dimension to food, turning meals into symbols of health, community, and even identity. The rise of empires and trade networks intensified this process. Markets became filled with diverse ingredients, and travelers brought recipes that challenged and enriched local traditions. In port cities and caravan hubs, culinary exchanges happened naturally. Arab traders introduced rice and citrus fruits to parts of Europe and Africa. Indian spices traveled to the Middle East and beyond, influencing Persian, Turkish, and even East African cuisine. In return, regional ingredients flowed back, altering the way food was grown and served. Over time, kitchens became sites of creativity and exchange, where recipes were rewritten, methods adjusted, and flavors reinvented. These movements were often unrecorded in formal histories, yet they left lasting impressions on the plates of millions. The global spread of cuisine also reflects power dynamics, colonization, and resistance. Sugar plantations in the Caribbean, for example, were built on forced labor and reshaped global consumption. Coffee and tea became essential to social rituals in Europe and Asia, sourced from distant lands under colonial rule. Yet, even within these unequal exchanges, food retained the power to connect people across divides. Immigrant communities held on to their recipes as a way of preserving heritage. In turn, their foods influenced local palates, gradually becoming part of the mainstream culinary landscape. Today's global cuisine is a testament to this long journey. Whether it's sushi in New York, pizza in Cairo, or curry in London, each dish tells a story of migration, memory, and transformation. Agriculture continues to evolve with technology, but its heart remains rooted in the pasta, past shaped by movement, exchange, and the universal need to cultivate, cook, and share. Through cuisine and agriculture, we witness a history not only of survival but of imagination, connection, and flavor. In every taste, there lingers a trace of the road it traveled. The role of empires, Rome, Byzantium, Tang, and Mongol influence. Empires have played a crucial role in shaping the course of human history by connecting regions, consolidating power, and enabling the movement of people, goods, and ideas across vast distances. Among the most influential were the Roman, Byzantine, Tang, and Mongol empires. Each of these powers emerged in different times and places, yet all left lasting marks on culture, governance, religion, and global interaction. Their legacies continue to be felt today, embedded in languages, legal systems, urban planning, and artistic traditions. Through military strength, administrative innovation, and cultural patronage, these empires shaped the worlds they controlled and influenced those far beyond their borders. The Roman Empire, with its foundations in the Italian peninsula, expanded to dominate much of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. At its height, Rome built an extensive network of roads, cities, and trade routes that facilitated communication and economic exchange. Roman law, language, and engineering became models for future generations. Latin spread across the continent and evolved into several modern languages, while Roman architecture inspired countless buildings around the world. The empire's ability to integrate diverse peoples through a shared identity and administrative system helped maintain stability for centuries. Even after its decline, the Roman legacy endured in education, governance, and cultural memory. The Byzantine Empire, which grew out of the eastern portion of the Roman Empire, carried forward many Roman traditions while developing its own distinct character. Centered in Constantinople, it acted as a bridge between Europe and Asia. Byzantine art, with its iconic mosaics and religious imagery, influenced Christian aesthetics for generations. The empire preserved classical knowledge in libraries and academies, transmitting ancient Greek and Roman thought to later civilizations. The Byzantine legal code, especially under Emperor Justinian, became a foundational reference for legal systems across Europe. Its strategic location enabled it to serve as a hub for trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange for over 1,000 years. The Tang Empire of China marked a golden age of culture, innovation, and international engagement. Flourishing between the 7th and 10th centuries, the Tang Dynasty opened China to a broader world through the Silk Road and maritime trade. Cities like Chang'an became melting pots of different ethnicities and religions, including Buddhists, Zoroastrians, and Nestorian Christians. Tang poets, painters, and philosophers produced works that still influence Chinese culture today. The empire emphasized civil service and education, setting up examinations that allowed for merit-based advancement, a system later emulated by other states. Its openness to foreign ideas and peoples helped it thrive as a global cultural center. The Mongol Empire, emerging from the steppes of Central Asia in the 13th century, created the largest contiguous land empire in history. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongols united vast territories stretching from China to Eastern Europe. Though known for their military prowess, the Mongols were also notable for fostering trade, communication, and cultural exchange. The Pax Mongolica, or Mongol peace, allowed for safer passage along the Silk Road, encouraging interaction between East and West. Goods, technologies, and ideas moved more freely than ever before. The Mongols tolerated diverse religions and promoted officials based on ability, not origin. Their administrative practices influenced the regions they ruled, leaving behind a complex and multifaceted legacy. These empires, despite their different origins and timelines, each played a part in shaping the global narrative. They facilitated encounters between distant societies, spread knowledge, and redefined political and cultural boundaries. Their influence was not limited to military conquests or territorial expansion, but extended to language, art, law, and belief systems. In doing so, they connected human communities in ways that shaped the modern world. The legacy of Rome, Byzantium, Tang, and the Mongols reminds us that empires, though finite, can have enduring impacts. Their rise and fall are part of a continuous historical process that reflects the complexities of human ambition, cooperation, and innovation. Through their stories, we trace the shared paths of civilization, the Mongol Empire and Pax Mongolica. The Mongol Empire, rising from the vast steppes of Central Asia in the early 13th century, became one of the most formidable and expansive empires in world history. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongols carved out a dominion that stretched from the Pacific coast of China to the plains of Eastern Europe. This extraordinary expansion was not merely a tale of conquest, but also of unprecedented connectivity. The establishment of the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol peace, created conditions that allowed for the flourishing of trade, travel, and communication across Eurasia. The Mongol Empire brought distant civilizations into contact, transforming the cultural, economic, and political landscapes of the Old World. The unification of numerous warring tribes under Genghis Khan was a critical turning point. Through skillful diplomacy, tactical brilliance, and strict discipline, he consolidated power and launched campaigns that toppled established kingdoms and empires. Despite the Mongols' reputation for fierce warfare, they also possessed an ability to govern diverse populations with pragmatism. Their empire did not impose a single culture or religion, but instead accommodated many. This inclusivity became one of the strengths of Mongol rule, allowing local customs to survive while ensuring loyalty to the Khan. Religious tolerance was officially supported, and scholars, artisans, and traders from many backgrounds were welcomed into the empire. One of the most remarkable outcomes of Mongol rule was the unprecedented level of safety and order maintained across the empire's vast expanse. The Pax Mongolica ensured that caravans, merchants, and envoys could travel with relative security across thousands of miles. This network of stability enabled the Silk Road to thrive once more, linking the markets of China, Persia, Central Asia, and Europe. Goods such as silk, spices, textiles, and precious stones were traded widely, but so too were ideas, inventions, and artistic styles. Scientific knowledge, printing techniques, and even culinary practices spread from one region to another. The Mongols themselves often acted as facilitators, encouraging the exchange of knowledge between Islamic, Chinese, and European scholars. The Mongol postal system, known as the Yam, played a crucial role in maintaining communication across the empire. Relay stations were established at regular intervals, equipped with fresh horses and provisions. This allowed for swift transmission of information and the movement of people across regions that had once been isolated by geography and political boundaries. Diplomats and travelers such as Marco Polo journeyed across Mongol territories, documenting the wealth, diversity, and order they encountered. These accounts helped introduce aspects of Eastern culture and technology to the Western world, laying the groundwork for later periods of exploration and cultural curiosity. Mongol administration was marked by efficiency and innovation. While the empire was divided into khanates after Genghis Khan's death, the overall system of governance emphasized merit and loyalty. Officials were often chosen for their ability rather than their lineage. The Mongols adopted useful administrative practices from the peoples they conquered, blending Persian, Chinese, and Turkic traditions into their governance. This fusion of ideas helped sustain a complex and multicultural empire for over a century. Taxation systems were streamlined, census-taking became widespread, and infrastructure projects such as roads and bridges were expanded. The influence of the Mongol Empire persisted even after its political decline. Successor states continued many of its policies, and the networks established during the Pax Mongolica remained active in various forms. The cultural exchanges and trade links fostered during Mongol rule contributed to the early stirrings of the modern global world. Although the empire eventually fragmented, its impact was profound. The Mongol period demonstrated how even a military power born on the steppes could foster an environment of creativity, movement, and exchange. The legacy of the Mongol Empire and the Pax Mongolica stands as a powerful reminder that empires are not shaped by force alone. Through stability, openness, and cross-cultural interaction, the Mongols reshaped the fabric of Eurasia, leaving behind a history marked by both conquest and connection, diplomacy and espionage along the Silk Road. Along the vast and winding paths of the Silk Road, where traders carried silk, spices, gems, and stories, there also traveled diplomats, envoys, and spies. Beyond commerce, the Silk Road was a critical artery for political maneuvering and strategic intelligence. Empires, kingdoms, and city-states understood the value of information, alliances, and negotiation, especially in regions where borders shifted and power often changed hands. Diplomacy and espionage became vital tools for maintaining influence, avoiding conflict, and gaining advantage over rivals. The Silk Road, stretching from China through Central Asia to the Mediterranean, was not only a corridor of goods, but a network of watchful eyes and calculated conversations. Diplomacy along the Silk Road was often rooted in ceremonial exchanges, where gifts and tribute played a key role. Rulers sent emissaries to foreign courts to present valuable offerings and to negotiate trade privileges, military alliances, or peace treaties. These diplomatic missions were complex operations that involved understanding the customs, languages, and politics of distant cultures. An envoy's success depended on their ability to build trust, read intentions, and convey their own leader's strength and generosity. Sometimes, a single well-placed delegation could prevent a war or open new markets. These missions fostered relationships that went beyond immediate political interests, often resulting in long-standing ties between regions that seemed worlds apart. At the same time, espionage was a hidden but equally important aspect of Silk Road politics. As traders and pilgrims passed through borders, they were often observed or questioned by local authorities. Rulers sent agents disguised as merchants or religious figures to gather information about enemy movements, military strength, or internal dissent. These spies reported back with crucial intelligence that could shape decisions on war, trade, or diplomacy. Some were tasked with influencing local leaders or sowing unrest in rival territories. The blending of cultures and frequent movement of people made it easier for agents to travel unnoticed, making the Silk Road a complex web of overt trade and covert operations. Empires such as the Tang in China, the Sassanids in Persia, and various Central Asian Khanates maintained elaborate systems of surveillance and intelligence gathering. They monitored not only their own territories but also paid close attention to the affairs of neighboring regions. Control of key caravanserais and mountain passes gave them leverage, as these spots became hubs for gathering news and monitoring foreign agents. Local guides, innkeepers, and caravan leaders sometimes served as informants, passing on useful details to state officials. These informal networks supplemented official channels and added depth to each empire's understanding of the broader geopolitical landscape. Diplomatic encounters often involved not only politics but also culture and religion. Buddhist monks, Islamic scholars, and Christian missionaries traveled alongside ambassadors, sometimes acting as informal envoys themselves. Their presence allowed for a more nuanced exchange of ideas and opened doors that might have been closed to traditional state representatives. Cultural diplomacy helped ease tensions and build rapport, offering rulers insights into the beliefs and practices of their counterparts. These exchanges, though subtle, contributed to the development of mutual respect and understanding across regions with different worldviews. The role of women in diplomacy, though less documented, was also significant. In some cases, royal marriages were arranged as part of broader diplomatic strategies. A princess might be sent to a foreign court, not only as a bride but as a symbol of peace and alliance. These unions were carefully negotiated and often served as long-term investments in regional stability. The political weight carried by these arrangements reflected the importance of interpersonal relationships in statecraft along the Silk Road. Through both diplomacy and espionage, the Silk Road became more than a trade route, it became a stage for strategy, where power was exercised through words as much as weapons. This careful balance of negotiation and intelligence helped maintain the fragile peace between rival states and fostered a level of interconnectivity that was rare for the time. In every diplomatic letter carried across deserts or whispered secret passed through a crowded bazaar, the Silk Road revealed its true nature as a corridor, not just of commerce, but of calculated influence and subtle power. Bandits, deserts, and disease. Dangers on the road. The Silk Road, stretching across thousands of miles, connected empires, cultures, and markets from China to the Mediterranean. Yet behind its fame as a route of trade and cultural exchange lay a path filled with constant peril. For merchants, pilgrims, envoys, and travelers, the journey was far from easy. The dangers of the road were many, and they came not only from the harsh terrain but also from human threats and invisible enemies. Bandits, deserts, and disease were ever-present challenges that turned each journey into a test of endurance, courage, and luck. These hazards shaped the history of the Silk Road just as much as the goods and ideas it carried. Banditry was one of the most persistent threats to travelers along the Silk Road. In remote mountain passes, narrow valleys, and forested paths, raiders lay in wait for vulnerable caravans. These bandits targeted merchants carrying silk, gold, spices, or precious stones. Knowing that trade routes meant wealth, armed and often ruthless, they would strike swiftly, stealing cargo, taking hostages, and sometimes leaving destruction in their wake. Local rulers and empires tried to patrol the routes and set up watchtowers and garrisons, but the vast distances and difficult terrain made it impossible to ensure complete safety. Travelers were often forced to hire guards, travel in large groups, or delay their journey until a more secure moment arrived. Despite precautions, many still fell victim to ambushes, making security one of the major costs of long-distance trade. Beyond the threat of bandits, the natural environment posed immense difficulties. Deserts such as the Taklamakan and Gobi presented some of the most dangerous stretches of the route. Known for their extreme temperatures and shifting sands, these vast wastelands could trap entire caravans. In the scorching heat of the day and the freezing cold of night, survival was uncertain. Water sources were scarce, and navigational errors could lead to deadly consequences. Sandstorms could erase tracks and disorient even experienced guides. Oases offered brief refuge, but the long distances between them tested both humans and animals to their limits. The physical toll of desert travel left many exhausted, weakened, or lost to the elements. Mountain ranges like the Pamirs and Hindu Kush brought their own risks. Narrow paths along steep cliffs, sudden landslides, avalanches, and altitude sickness all threatened those who dared to cross. Pack animals could slip, supplies could be lost, and communication was nearly impossible. These high-altitude regions, though breathtaking in beauty, were among the most unforgiving segments of the Silk Road. Still, They remained crucial links in the chain of connection between East and West, and those who braved them did so knowing the value of what lay on the other side. Disease was another silent yet deadly danger that travelled alongside the goods and people of the Silk Road. In crowded caravanserais, bustling markets, and packed towns, infections could spread rapidly. The movement of people across regions brought new pathogens to populations with no prior exposure. Epidemics, such as the one later known as the Black Death, are believed to have travelled westward in part along these trade routes. Fleas carried by rodents, combined with the close quarters of travel and trade, helped spread disease across continents. Though not every outbreak was as catastrophic, illness was a regular concern, and healers, herbal remedies, and local knowledge were essential to survival. The psychological toll of the journey was also significant. Travellers faced long periods of isolation, uncertainty, and fear. Stories of lost caravans, vanished travellers, and cursed paths added to the unease. Yet despite all these dangers, people continued to travel the Silk Road. The rewards, economic, cultural, and spiritual, were worth the risks. The challenges led to the creation of support systems, fortified rest stops, medical practices, and alliances with local powers that helped reduce, though never eliminate, the hazards. The Silk Road was more than a symbol of exchange. It was a corridor of resilience. Those who journeyed it faced threats that demanded preparation, endurance, and a deep understanding of the land and its people. The perils of bandits, deserts, and disease defined the experience of the road as much as its promise of connection and discovery. The decline of the Overland Silk Road. The decline of the Overland Silk Road was not the result of a single event, but a gradual process shaped by shifting political powers, changing trade dynamics, and evolving technologies. For centuries, this network of routes had linked East and West, enabling the exchange of goods, cultures, religions, and knowledge. Caravans crossed vast deserts, mountains, and plains, connecting China with Persia, the Middle East, and Europe. However, the conditions that once made the Silk Road a vital artery of global commerce began to change, slowly reducing its importance and leading to its eventual decline as a major overland route. One major factor in the decline was the fall of powerful empires that had once protected and maintained the Silk Road. The stability provided by the Mongol Empire, particularly during the Pax Mongolica, had created an environment where merchants could travel safely across Asia. After the fragmentation of the Mongol Khanates, the unity that had supported long-distance travel dissolved. Local rulers often lacked the means or will to protect large stretches of the road, and as political boundaries fractured, so too did the networks of trust and cooperation. Increased conflict between rival states and the rise of banditry made travel more dangerous and unpredictable. The collapse of key trading cities and routes also contributed to the decline. Many of the urban centers that had thrived on Silk Road commerce began to fade as trade shifted elsewhere. Once bustling caravan hubs lost their influence due to war, environmental degradation, or shifting trade patterns. Rivers changed course, oases dried up, and overuse of land led to soil exhaustion in some regions, making long journeys less feasible. Without these critical support points, the logistical challenges of sustaining overland caravans increased dramatically, discouraging merchants from using these routes. Another significant cause was the rise of maritime trade. By the 15th century, technological advances in navigation and shipbuilding allowed European powers, especially Portugal and Spain, to explore sea routes to Asia. These new maritime pathways offered faster, safer, and more cost-effective ways to transport goods. Ships could carry larger quantities than camel caravans and faced fewer obstacles related to terrain or hostile territory. The sea routes also allowed direct contact between Europe and the coastal cities of India, Southeast Asia, and China, reducing the reliance on middlemen and overland passage. As a result, the old land routes began to lose their strategic and economic relevance. The spread of disease along the Silk Road further weakened its viability. The Black Death, which devastated populations across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East in the 14th century, is believed to have spread in part through Silk Road contacts. Fear of infection led to tighter border controls and declining willingness to host foreign travelers. Repeated outbreaks made long-distance interactions seem more dangerous and less appealing, compounding the impact of political and economic challenges already facing the route. Additionally, changing demand for certain goods shifted the focus of trade. The high value once placed on silk, spices, and other traditional luxury items began to evolve as local industries grew and new consumer preferences emerged. European economies began to develop their own sources for materials that were once imported. Meanwhile, colonial powers increasingly focused on controlling territories that offered direct access to resources, bypassing older systems of exchange. The final blows came with the rise of powerful empires like the Ottoman and Safavid, who often viewed European trade ambitions with suspicion or opposition. Control over land routes became entangled with military conflicts and religious tensions, making overland travel through certain regions more complicated. The Silk Road, once a beacon of connectivity, slowly fragmented under these pressures. Though it faded as a primary channel for trade, the legacy of the Overland Silk Road remains strong. Its decline marked the end of one chapter in global exchange, but laid the foundation for new networks of interaction. The memory of the Silk Road lives on in the histories of the cultures it once linked, reminding us of a time when roads across deserts and mountains connected the world in ways both profound and enduring. The sea routes. Indian Ocean and South China Sea. The sea routes of the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea formed one of the most important networks of maritime trade in world history. These waters connected vast regions, including East Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and China. For centuries, merchants, sailors, and explorers navigated these seas, carrying goods, ideas, technologies, and beliefs across great distances. Unlike the overland Silk Road, these maritime paths offered faster travel, larger cargo capacity, and access to coastal civilizations that flourished through trade. The Indian Ocean and South China Sea became highways of exchange, shaping the development of powerful port cities, regional economies, and cross-cultural interactions. Monsoon winds played a vital role in enabling this trade. These seasonal wind patterns allowed ships to travel across long stretches of ocean by following predictable cycles. Mariners learned to harness these winds, sailing from East Africa to India and from there to Southeast Asia and China. This natural rhythm of the sea encouraged planned voyages, where traders would wait for favorable winds before setting sail, and often spend months in foreign ports before returning. These extended stays fostered cultural exchange, marriages, language blending, and the spread of religions such as Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. The goods traded across these waters were diverse and valuable. From China came silk, porcelain, and tea. India offered spices, textiles, and gems. Southeast Asia contributed cloves, nutmeg, and exotic woods, while Africa supplied ivory, gold, and enslaved people. These commodities moved through ports like Calicut, Malacca, Aden, and Guangzhou, where markets bustled with activity and communities of foreign merchants formed. Trade created wealth not only for merchants but also for rulers who taxed commerce and invested in harbours, warehouses, and security. Naval patrols and local alliances helped protect the sea lanes, ensuring continued prosperity for coastal kingdoms. Political entities along these routes often grew in power due to their control of maritime trade. In Southeast Asia, the Srivijaya and Majapahit empires built naval strength and thriving economies by dominating key straits and sea passages. In India, coastal kingdoms flourished by connecting inland production with overseas markets. The Arab world played a central role in linking African, Indian, and Mediterranean trade. These empires and states recognized the strategic importance of the sea and developed diplomatic ties and maritime expertise to support long-distance commerce. Religion also traveled these routes. Muslim traders introduced Islam to coastal East Africa, the Indian subcontinent, and island Southeast Asia, often peacefully through trade relations and community networks. Buddhist teachings reached distant shores carried by monks and sailors, while Hindu influences shaped the architecture and art of Southeast Asian temples. These interactions created rich cultural blends, visible in language, food, clothing, and belief systems that still persist today. Multicultural port cities became centers of learning, religious tolerance, and artistic expression, showing how maritime trade fostered more than just economic growth. Technological developments further enhanced the use of these sea routes. Innovations such as the lateen sail, the magnetic compass, and improved hull design increased the efficiency and safety of maritime travel. Arab, Indian, and Chinese navigators developed detailed charts and maps, passing their knowledge across generations. The spread of such techniques helped link regions more tightly, allowing for greater consistency in trade and contact. Over time, the significance of these sea routes only grew. Even when political powers changed or individual ports declined, the broader network remained active. Later, European explorers and colonizers followed these well-established paths, seeking their own fortunes and spreading their own influence. The Indian Ocean and South China Sea routes became central to the global trade system that emerged in the early modern era. These maritime networks laid the foundation for centuries of exchange that shaped civilizations across continents. The sea, with all its risks and uncertainties, became a path to opportunity and transformation. Through calm waters and stormy tides, the Indian Ocean and South China Sea carried the weight of history, linking the world in ways that endure to this day. Role of Arab, Indian, and Southeast Asian traders. Arab, Indian, and Southeast Asian traders were instrumental in the development and expansion of maritime trade across the Indian Ocean and surrounding seas. Their movements, driven by commerce, helped build powerful networks that connected East Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. These trade routes were not just economic corridors, but also channels for cultural, religious, and technological exchange. The success of these trading communities lay in their adaptability, seafaring skills, and ability to foster long-term relationships with distant regions. Through their voyages, these traders contributed to the rise of cosmopolitan port cities and the blending of traditions across continents. Arab traders played a leading role in maritime trade as early as the first millennium, Navigating the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, they reached the coasts of East Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. They brought with them goods such as dates, textiles, incense, and later coffee. Using ships known as does, designed with triangular sails to catch the monsoon winds, they could travel long distances efficiently. Their deep knowledge of sea routes and weather patterns allowed them to maintain consistent commercial ties. In addition to their cargo, Arab traders introduced Islam, which spread gradually through peaceful interaction, intermarriage, and the establishment of mosques in coastal communities. Many Arab merchants settled in the regions they traded with, forming influential communities. Their presence was especially strong in cities like Malacca, Calicut, and Zanzibar, where they participated in local trade and governance. Through these settlements, Arabic language and customs mingled with local traditions. The cultural exchange was not one-sided. Arabs also adopted elements of local dress, cuisine, and commerce. The blend of cultures gave rise to unique hybrid societies that reflected both indigenous and Arab influences. This interaction helped promote tolerance and strengthened commercial cooperation across different faiths and ethnicities. Indian traders were equally significant in shaping maritime commerce. India's geographic position between East and West made it a central hub for trade. Ports like Calicut, Surat, and Cambay served as vital links in the global trading system. Indian merchants exported spices, cotton textiles, ivory, and precious stones, while importing horses, metals, and luxury goods from the Middle East and Southeast Asia. Indian ships, well constructed for ocean travel, carried goods across long distances, reinforcing India's central role in the regional economy. Beyond trade, Indian influence was visible in the cultural and religious life of many port cities. Hinduism and Buddhism spread to Southeast Asia through both formal missions and informal exchanges, facilitated by merchants. Indian epics, art styles, and languages left a lasting imprint on societies in places like Cambodia, Java, and Bali. Indian traders often built temples and supported cultural life, helping to establish a shared heritage that extended far beyond the Indian subcontinent. This peaceful form of influence encouraged local elites to adopt Indian customs, creating a foundation for diplomatic and economic alliances. Southeast Asian traders were not merely recipients of influence but active participants in maritime trade. Situated along key sea lanes, they controlled important choke points such as the Strait of Malacca. Local rulers supported commerce by developing strong navies, maintaining safe harbors, and building alliances with foreign merchants. Products like cloves, nutmeg, sandalwood, and exotic resins attracted buyers from across the ocean. These goods, unique to the region, gave Southeast Asian traders considerable bargaining power in international markets. Southeast Asian ports became multicultural centers, where traders from many backgrounds lived and worked together. Local merchants learned to speak multiple languages and navigate different cultural systems. They welcomed foreign traders, providing services, storage, and protection for cargo. Over time, these cities developed their own identities as hubs of trade and culture, where no single tradition dominated, but many coexisted. The contributions of Arab, Indian, and Southeast Asian traders were essential in creating a world where goods and ideas moved freely across seas. Their legacy is seen in the shared traditions, languages, and beliefs that still connect communities across the Indian Ocean today. Archaeological discoveries and ancient manuscripts. Archaeological discoveries and ancient manuscripts have played a vital role in deepening our understanding of human history. especially in regions connected by long-standing trade routes, migration, and cultural exchange. These findings provide direct evidence of past civilizations, shedding light on how people lived, worshipped, traveled, and interacted across distant lands. Through careful excavation and preservation, archaeologists and scholars have uncovered the material and written remains of societies that once flourished along routes such as the Silk Road and the maritime networks of the Indian Ocean. Each object, structure, and scroll recovered from the earth or preserved in libraries adds another layer to the shared story of human development. From buried cities to forgotten temples, archaeological sites reveal the complexity and advancement of ancient societies. Ruins of caravanserais, trade hubs, religious shrines, and fortresses demonstrate the scale and organization of trade networks. These structures offer insights into architecture, urban planning, and the everyday lives of merchants and travelers. In Central Asia, the remains of cities like Samarkand and Merv show how these urban centers once thrived as cultural and commercial crossroads. Excavations have uncovered coins, ceramics, tools, and jewelry that reflect artistic styles and craftsmanship influenced by various regions, indicating a high degree of cultural interaction. Similarly, shipwrecks found along old maritime routes have uncovered cargoes of porcelain, spices, beads, and metalwork. These discoveries confirm the extensive trade that took place across seas connecting China, India, Southeast Asia, and the Arabian Peninsula. The goods recovered from the depths of the ocean demonstrate both the value placed on long-distance commerce and the risks faced by seafarers. They also help reconstruct trading patterns and maritime technologies used by ancient sailors. Each shipwreck is a time capsule, preserving the story of a single voyage within the broader narrative of global exchange. Alongside physical artifacts, ancient manuscripts provide a written record of intellectual, spiritual, and administrative life. These texts include religious scriptures, scientific treatises, travel logs, trade documents, and literary works. They serve as windows into the thoughts, beliefs, and knowledge of people from earlier eras. In the caves of Dunhuang in western China, for instance, a hidden library containing thousands of manuscripts was discovered in the early 20th century. These texts, written in various languages, reflect a rich blend of cultural and religious traditions, including Buddhism, Taoism, and Nestorian Christianity. They illustrate the vibrant intellectual life along the Silk Road and the value placed on writing and preservation. In India, ancient palm leaf manuscripts written in Sanskrit, Tamil, and other languages offer deep insights into philosophy, medicine, astronomy, and poetry. These texts were carefully copied and passed down through generations, often stored in temples and learning centers. In the Islamic world, scholars collected and translated works from Greece, Persia, and India, preserving them in Arabic script. These manuscripts later influenced scientific and philosophical thought in Europe. Libraries in cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Timbuktu housed valuable collections that demonstrate the global flow of knowledge across cultures. Preserving and studying these manuscripts requires meticulous effort. Many have suffered from time, climate, and neglect. Specialists in conservation and linguistics work to decode faded ink, translate forgotten scripts, and interpret complex symbolism. Digital technology has increasingly been used to archive and share these texts, making them accessible to researchers and the public around the world. Together, Archaeological discoveries and ancient manuscripts provide a more complete picture of the past. They highlight not just the rise and fall of empires, but also the connections between ordinary people across vast regions. These sources remind us that history is not just found in monuments, but also in the fragments of pottery, lost scrolls, and inscriptions on stone. They allow us to hear voices from centuries ago and understand the world they shaped. Through them, the legacy of human creativity, curiosity, and connection continues to be uncovered and preserved for future generations. The modern New Silk Road and China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. The modern New Silk Road, primarily shaped by China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, represents a significant effort to revive and expand the ancient trade routes that once connected Asia, Europe, and parts of Africa. Announced in 2013 by Chinese President Xi Jinping, the BRI is an ambitious global development strategy aimed at enhancing regional connectivity through massive infrastructure investments. Drawing inspiration from the historical Silk Road, the initiative seeks to promote economic cooperation, cultural exchange, and global integration in the 21st century. It combines overland and maritime routes to create a vast network of trade and transportation corridors, reaching dozens of countries across multiple continents. The overland component, known as the Silk Road Economic Belt, focuses on linking China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe through highways, railways, and pipelines. This part of the initiative echoes the ancient paths where caravans once moved goods and ideas across the Eurasian landmass. Modern trains now travel from Chinese cities to Europe, significantly reducing the time it takes for goods to reach their destinations compared to traditional sea routes. Industrial zones, logistics hubs, and economic corridors are being developed along these routes to support trade and manufacturing. The maritime component, referred to as the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road, connects Chinese ports with Southeast Asia, South Asia, East Africa, and beyond. It involves the construction and expansion of ports, shipping lanes, and coastal infrastructure to boost sea trade. This initiative aims to enhance maritime connectivity and support global supply chains. Ports in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Greece, and Kenya have seen major investments as part of this effort. These developments have the potential to transform coastal economies and create new centers of commerce. The BRI is not limited to transportation infrastructure. It also includes investments in energy, telecommunications, education, and cultural initiatives. Projects such as power plants, fiber optic cables, and vocational training centers are part of the broader vision to build economic resilience and promote shared development. These investments are designed to foster long-term partnerships between China and participating countries. The BRI promotes cooperation in finance, innovation, and policy alignment to support its overarching goals of connectivity and mutual benefit. Many countries participating in the BRI see it as an opportunity to improve infrastructure, attract investment, and strengthen regional integration. Roads, railways, and energy projects can help unlock economic potential and connect remote regions to global markets. In landlocked countries of Central Asia and Africa, the initiative provides new access points for trade and development. In Southeast Asia, it supports existing regional goals of improved infrastructure and economic modernization. However, the BRI has also attracted scrutiny and debate. Concerns have been raised about debt sustainability, environmental impact, and transparency. Some critics argue that certain countries may face financial strain due to the scale of the loans required to finance large infrastructure projects. Others question the long-term economic viability of some developments. In response, there have been efforts to improve project evaluation standards and encourage more inclusive and sustainable practices. Discussions about fair terms, local labor involvement, and environmental protection are increasingly part of the ongoing dialogue surrounding the initiative. Despite differing views, the Belt and Road Initiative reflects a significant shift in the global economic landscape. It highlights China's expanding role in international development and its interest in shaping the future of trade and cooperation. As the world becomes more interconnected, initiatives like the BRI demonstrate how modern infrastructure can revive ancient ideas of global exchange. The new Silk Road is not merely a return to history, but a reimagining of it for a new era of global interdependence. Through roads, railways, and sea lanes, the BRI continues to reshape how nations collaborate and connect. It reflects the enduring power of infrastructure to bridge distances and create shared opportunities. Whether viewed as a challenge or a chance, the modern Silk Road is a defining development of the contemporary world, rooted in history but directed toward the future. Cultural legacy in literature, music, and folklore. The cultural legacy of human civilization is richly preserved in literature, music, and folklore. These creative forms serve as both mirrors and vessels of the values, beliefs, and experiences of societies across time. From ancient epics to regional tales, from sacred songs to traditional instruments, the heritage expressed through words, rhythms, and stories reflects the depth of human emotion, memory, and imagination. Literature, music, and folklore not only entertain but also connect generations, carry lessons, and offer insight into the cultural journeys of people from diverse regions. Across continents and centuries, they have remained powerful tools for preserving identity and fostering unity. Literature has long been a key medium through which civilizations record their thoughts and dreams. From the oral traditions of early societies to the written texts of classical eras, stories and poems have captured the struggles, triumphs, and aspirations of humanity. Epics such as the Indian Mahabharata, the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, and the Greek Odyssey have not only shaped national identities, but also influenced world literature. These works often blend myth and history, offering both entertainment and moral guidance. Translated into numerous languages, they continue to inspire readers across the globe, illustrating the enduring relevance of ancient wisdom. Beyond formal literature, folklore has played a crucial role in preserving local customs and beliefs. Folk tales, legends, and proverbs, passed down orally from generation to generation, provide a window into the everyday lives of people. These narratives often feature symbolic character heroes, tricksters, spirits, or wise eldersand convey messages about justice, kindness, and resilience. While rooted in specific regions, many folk tales share universal themes, showing how cultures separated by distance still express common values. From the clever fox of Asian tales to the storytelling griots of West Africa, folklore continues to shape cultural identity and community bonds. Music, like literature and folklore, serves as a timeless expression of culture. It reflects the rhythms of life celebrations, mourning, work, and worship. Traditional instruments, melodies, and songs are often unique to specific regions, Yet music has the ability to cross linguistic and cultural boundaries. In Central Asia, the haunting tones of the komuz and dombra echo centuries of nomadic life, while in the Middle East, the oud and rhythmic drumming create rich musical traditions tied to poetry and ritual. African drumming ensembles, Indian classical ragas, and Southeast Asian gong orchestras all demonstrate the diversity and beauty of musical heritage. Music also plays a significant role in religious and spiritual practice. Sacred hymns, chants, and devotional songs are central to rituals and festivals, helping communities express collective belief and devotion. In many cultures, music accompanies important life events such as birth, marriage, and death, marking transitions with sounds that carry deep emotional and symbolic meaning. Music not only preserves tradition but also adapts over time, blending ancient forms with modern styles to reach new audiences. This dynamic evolution allows music to remain relevant while honoring its origins. The interaction of literature, music, and folklore has often resulted in rich cultural synthesis. Poems become lyrics, stories inspire songs, and melodies are woven into theatrical performances. In many traditions, storytelling is performed with musical accompaniment, enhancing its emotional impact and memorability. Traveling bards, poets, and musicians played a vital role in spreading culture across regions, carrying tales and tunes from one community to another. These traveling artists helped form cultural bridges, linking distant societies through shared artistic expression. In modern times, efforts to document and preserve traditional literature, music, and folklore have intensified. Archives, recordings, translations, and cultural festivals all contribute to keeping these forms alive. At the same time, artists continue to reinterpret them, blending old and new to create innovative expressions that speak to contemporary audiences while respecting the past. The legacy of culture in literature, music, and folklore remains a living tradition. It reminds us of where we come from and connects us to a shared human experience. These creative forms offer both continuity and change, preserving the spirit of history while inspiring the imagination of the future. The Silk Road as a symbol of globalization. The Silk Road stands as one of history's earliest and most enduring symbols of globalization. Stretching across continents, this vast network of trade routes connected east and west, linking China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. While it was originally used for the exchange of silk, its influence extended far beyond the movement of goods. The Silk Road facilitated the transfer of ideas, technologies, religious beliefs, artistic traditions, and scientific knowledge. It served as a bridge between civilizations, creating patterns of interaction that helped shape the world's social, economic, and cultural development. As such, the Silk Road represents an early model of interconnectedness that foreshadowed the modern age of global exchange. Throughout its history, the Silk Road was defined not only by trade, but also by cooperation. Merchants, pilgrims, scholars, and diplomats journeyed along these routes, engaging with unfamiliar cultures and learning from one another. These encounters brought mutual understanding, enriched local traditions, and expanded people's awareness of the world. Along the way, languages were learned, alliances were formed, and communities grew more diverse. Caravanserais, or roadside inns, welcomed travelers from distant lands, providing spaces where people of different backgrounds could meet and share experiences. In this way, the Silk Road promoted peaceful exchange and mutual benefit, hallmarks of what we now call globalization. Goods that traveled along the Silk Road tell a story of widespread connection. From Chinese silk and porcelain to Indian spices, Persian carpets, Roman glassware, and Arabian incense, the variety of products reveals the breadth of international demand and cooperation. These goods were not simply commodities, they were also carriers of culture. Textiles carried motifs that reflected artistic traditions. Ceramics demonstrated techniques shared between regions. Spices and foods introduced new tastes and changed culinary practices across continents. The integration of these goods into daily life in far-off lands highlighted the power of trade to influence culture and lifestyle. Ideas traveled just as freely as goods. Buddhism spread from India into Central Asia and China, transforming spiritual life and influencing art and architecture. Islam moved eastward, establishing communities along the trading routes of Central Asia and Southeast Asia. Christianity and other beliefs also found their way into new regions. Scientific knowledge, including medical texts, astronomical charts, and mathematical theories, was translated and shared across cultures. Scholars from different backgrounds met in cities such as Baghdad, Samarkand, and Chang'an, exchanging insights that enriched the global body of knowledge. The intellectual collaboration made possible by the Silk Road laid the groundwork for advancements that benefited all who participated. Technology and innovation also moved along the Silk Road. Techniques in papermaking, printing, metallurgy, and agriculture spread from one civilization to another, helping societies improve their economies and adapt to new challenges. Such exchanges were crucial in building connections that transcended borders and encouraged mutual reliance. The spread of these practical skills allowed for the growth of cities, the improvement of infrastructure, and the strengthening of regional economies. The Silk Road's legacy continues to resonate today. It is often referenced in discussions of modern globalization because it represents the potential of connectivity to build prosperity and understanding among nations. Modern infrastructure projects and international cooperation efforts echo the spirit of the ancient roots. While today's global exchanges may be faster and more technologically advanced, the fundamental principles remain similar. Openness, communication, trade, and cultural exchange. As a symbol, the Silk Road reminds us that globalization is not a new concept, but a long-standing process that has evolved over time. It reflects the human desire to explore, to connect, and to learn from others. Its enduring significance lies in its ability to show how interconnected the world has always been, and how cooperation across distances can lead to shared growth. The Silk Road, in all its historical richness, continues to inspire visions of a world linked by mutual respect, trade, and cultural dialogue.